Yeah, man. So this is your podcast. What is the
Yes.
intro?
Let's see. Usually I go with the basic intro, but I'm just go with the flow. So welcome everybody to the Flow Discourses, a podcast made for the expansion of awareness, knowledge, power, and wealth. I have here today with me my guest appearance, my IMC brother, IMC tribal leader, and owner of Data Aligned Strategy. Did I say that right?
Close enough. Close enough. Aligned data strategy.
Aligned Data Strategy. My brother Ryan G. I'm not gonna say his full last name because I'm afraid I'm gonna butcher it, so I'm gonna just call him Ryan G for short. Welcome, brother.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Yep, and as it is with any IMC brother that appears on a guest appearance, it is always an honor to have any and all brothers able to appear. So, with all that being said, what can you tell us about yourself, about the audience, or to the audience, I should say?
To the audience, well, to keep it short, let's see. My name is Ryan Gafur Khan, also known as Ryu from the IMC Academy or IMC Nation nowadays. Um, where do I even start? Well, basically, my life started in the Netherlands, ended up still in the Netherlands, grew up in South America, and as I've grown older, I'm now 30 years old or something. I try not to think about it. I've been seeking truth, processes to evolve as a man, the whole idea of becoming a Renaissance man.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as we have noticed in society, or not even in society, in our own families, men are not even men anymore. We bitch too much, we complain too much, this and that. And all of a suddenly you end up doing pickup because you think that's the way to go. You know what I mean? You all went through that process. And then you hear, oh, building a business, that's the way to go, or investing in cryptocurrency is the way to go. But no one really asks the true question. And that question is, what do you really want? But what do you really, really want? And that's the question I've been trying to answer for myself. And thus, uh, it, to some way, I came into IMC Nation back then before the beasting process came about. And through the beasting process and some business coaches, I developed a business that combines business philosophy and the IMC philosophy in order to ensure that my clients not only get more revenue, but actually have a more simplified business that they can control better.
Mm-hmm.
Because isn't it fucked up that you don't know what happens in your business?
It is.
You see what I mean? Or not
Yeah.
even that you do know what happens in your business, but multiple teams or departments are not seeing eye to eye on the main point. Being it, the whole point of a business is to make money, duh, but also to have an objective. And that objective can be, let's make, America greener.
Mm-hmm.
To give a small example, if let's say sales and finance aren't working together because let's say finance indicated that not the right clients are coming in because they're not paying on time, thus making it an extreme backlog. And if you ever worked in customer service, that's the pain in the ass. And it can all be solved, but not just talking with finance or with sales, but bringing each other together and start functioning as less of a company in a classical sense and more of a tribe. The
Mm-hmm.
whole point of a tribe is to improve our survival. And that means resources. But if the resources not only becomes part of the tribe, but becomes actual loyal members, because without clients, we have no money. So
Mm-hmm.
we build a community around the tribe. And that's basically how my business model is. The founder being, the actual owner, the managers, the CEOs, anyone that makes a decision, to the foundation, that being the processes. Because without a process, you cannot have revenue consistently. To give an example, we both have done the beasting routines in very similar fashions, assumably.
Yes.
We went through very similar challenges. And when I started to notice, the INC process is very similar to a business process, or to any process of that matter, because it's basically steps taken consistently over time, met through very similar challenges, just
Mhm.
improving the life of the business as well as the life of the one who owns it, being me, being you, being whoever. Then lastly, have flow. What are the things that I've noticed in doing the beasting? Yeah, is using the process to indicate where I am weak, be it physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Because the moment we become aware is the moment we start to realize here might lay answers. Remember what ACD said on we men are beasts of conflict, we're made for it. That is true, we are natural problem solvers.
Mhm.
So what happens when you see a problem? From a business philosophy, you start to ask the question, is it a symptom or is it a root cause? And that's what I'm looking for. What is the root cause? What's the one pro gamer move that I can set, you know, can do that can solve this in one hit, preferably.
I feel
And
like
that's the I yeah,
I feel like everything that you said up until now makes so much sense. So when it comes to business, for example, a lot of people like to think of business as just like I go to work, I get a paycheck, there's managers, there's the higher ups, there's the lower downs. But when you
sure.
start talking about a tribe mentality, it takes on a whole different kind of perspective. And that's
Yeah,
basically what the not just the AZD process, but the overall IMC nation is. Because that's how we
yeah,
operate. We operate not only as a tribe, but as a business. And with all this being said, it's like you can take it outside of IMC and start applying it. I feel like if
exactly.
I feel like if a business could have that perspective of not just being at a job, but actually being part of a tribe. Or let's
Right.
say the CEO has that kind of mentality, things could start running better. Because I've experienced the whole like employees not being happy, managers not being happy. Everybody's got something to say. So
Well, everybody does have something to say. It's just the word alignment comes from that idea of are we on the same page?
mhm,
Because with an IMC, we're assumably all on the same page. We want to improve our lives. We want to add value to our tribe, and we want to bring our knowledge, especially as tribal leaders, to the outside and build our own.
mhm.
And where initially I thought, having a business has innately predatory behavior, I started to see things a bit differently. Because as I started to notice with an IMC is to be in the tribe, you need to be about the tribe. If you can't be about the tribe, then you need to get out. It's that simple because you won't survive.
Mhm.
It's about truly embracing the philosophy as, the Stoics say.
Mhm.
It's not about preaching, it's about owning it. It's like reading about karate and doing karate. It's two different things, my friend. And simply because I understand business doesn't necessarily mean I'm great at business. It's that I understand where I can improve it. I mean, I've helped a few IMC members not only gain more Instagram followers, but actually make a profit. And I did
Mhm.
it for free, simply to test out my ideas initially. And it all had to do with, just as I explained, what's the foundation. Let's say, what are the three main processes within a business or any business that are absolutely needed? What do you think?
I like to think that one of them is customers or clients, because without that, there won't be any business, pretty much.
Good. You're almost there. That would be supplied into any process that has to do with the client directly is an absolute necessary process, which is marketing, sales, and the delivery of the service or product.
Mm.
Without those three, you don't really have a business because with marketing, you have the attention. You can get also retention, and that's very valuable. Sales, Obviously, without sales, you don't have closers. Without closers, you don't have clients, period. And of course, you need to have a proper service, but in the way that you deliver it is also important. And that's why customer service is extremely important.
Hmm.
They might not get paid as much, but they're usually the biggest department within a company. Make sense?
Makes perfect sense. And
Now,
I do have a question. So I
do tell.
understand, like, I don't know that much about you. Obviously, we never met in person. You're all the way in the
Of course,
Netherlands. But from what I do know thus far, you're considered an expert in data analysis. And for
that
those
is true.
watching, including myself, there's certain things that come to mind, certain words, certain images, and whatnot. But just to kind of clear up the haze, like, what exactly does an expert data analysis do? And
Well, I understand the question. Well, data and analysis is a very broad term. It can be anything from analyzing specifically the data of products, of processes, of services, even maintenance. You should imagine all the systems log data, and this data needs to be imported somewhere, be it in the cloud, be it in a more centralized system, more on on-premise system it's called, and then the data needs to be processed into actual information at the end. Because imagine if you have a car, right? The dashboard gives us information on what's happening either in the past or currently, and if we're really smart, in the future.
Mhm.
And that's what I help do. I basically help facilitate the leverage and help advise or even actually advise decision makers and other users of the tool to make the right decision.
Mhm.
So in other words, an expert data analyst is nothing more than your trusted advisor.
So when it comes to this kind of data, let's take it on a small level, for example, the AZD
Sure.
process. Well, small level is an understatement. Let's take it on a level, the AZD process. Now, I remember when we first started, AZD would always talk about, keep track of how much reps you do, keep track of
Right.
this every day, all the small stuff that most people wouldn't really pay attention to. Like to me, I'd consider that data, but that's just on that kind of level. You expound it to a business, you got sales, you got how many clients you have, you got the
True.
ups and downs, stuff like that. So I can start seeing how important data is. And I do understand that you said you was able to combine your philosophy in business with this philosophy of IMC. How did you come to that breakthrough?
Well, the first hint was as we build our character, we learn to express it.
Hmm.
And if it can be done for martial arts, which is an expression of, it should also be possible for business. I mean, look at the kingpin. That's a businessman. He's a business tycoon. He expresses his his street wisdom, let's call it, in
Hmm.
such a way that he can outcompete the market, his rivals, other villains, Spider-Man occasionally, and that's what it's about. It's about finding out more about yourself through the expression of whatever towards whatever objective. And that's what I managed to find out. Now, the whole idea of data is only as useful as you know how to use it, let's say.
Hmm.
Because data in and of itself doesn't mean anything until you give it context. For instance, if you start to do reps, to keep it simple, and you keep track of it, either via paper, via Excel, and a trainings app, whatever, you can start to measure your improvement and you start to feel good.
Hmm.
And it's the feeling good is what I'm chasing. And the business philosophy comes into play when you start to realize that war and business are one and the same. The whole idea of war is I as a general or I as the trusted advisor of a general or conqueror or whomever. Is to be aware of what the general needs, or what my army needs, or what the objective is.
Mhm.
And through the process of analyzation and probably aligning my tribe, my soldiers towards an objective, I can at very least do a lot of damage. Winning is another issue because now I need to realize what kind of competitor am I dealing with. But for instance, if one of my legions is starting to become weak, I need to recognize that, figure out the root cause as fast as possible, and fix it so that I can even make it into a powerful business proposition.
Mhm.
Have you ever noticed in a car, once you've replaced a certain part, not only does the part work better with the engine, but the your driving experience becomes more smoother, usually.
I can definitely see
And
that.
it's the same thing with the martial arts. It's the same thing with dancing. It's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with I think, running an army or running a tribe. And it's those trends that I'm looking for. One simple fact is success leaves clues. We have seen a lot of people within IMC become very successful through the process. And that's why I'm staying in IMC, because I'm trying to figure that out.
Mhm.
And that's what, gives me inspiration. That's what gets me up in the morning. And it's funny because to be inspired means to be in spirit. In what kind of spirit? The IMC spirit.
Mhm.
And IMC spirit, in essence, is nothing more than be the best, fuck the rest. The rest being the market, my competitors, anyone that gets in my way.
Yeah,
And be the best. You know what? You see what I'm doing? Because it still follows my business principles of founder, foundation, and the flow. It still follows that, because to be the best means I need to be the best towards me, towards my tribe, and towards my community. I need to be so good in my foundations that of course people will follow me. And
Mhm.
anything that gets in the way of my flow. That's constraints. And if you remove the constraints, it's like martial arts. As we learn how to punch, as we learn how to kick, as we learn how to grapple, we try to figure out the most effective and efficient way. But of course, like a resisting opponent, the market will show resistance. And it's how we respond to that as a human being, as a tribal leader, as a business leader, as a tribe, as a company, is how we succeed. And thus we started to realize, and I hope you caught this, a stoic principle is now applied into a business principle.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Because it's how the company responds to new competition, to whatever changes, is how we win.
You ever thought about writing a book about this kind of stuff? This whole,
Eh,
well, what should I call it? Technique of being able to actually analyze and gather data and pretty much change. You get rid of whatever doesn't work. You start adding whatever does work. Like
it's
when you
it's
talk
funny you
about,
should say that, because literally right next to me I have one of my friend's book. I don't know if you know Ivan, Command Respect. He basically challenged me a few months ago, like, bro, it's really not that hard. Just write one page today, half an hour, and you'll be fine.
Mhm.
And then I started to think, because I think a lot. Hence, I'm an analyst. If there is a system in place, the only thing we need to figure out is how to become of a functioning system. And a functioning system, in this case, being how to write something. Even if it's bullshit, who cares? Write it. And in just what I said, we started to see another principle of the IMC process. It was never just about the stats. It's about, can I do just a little bit better? kind of push it just a little bit further and find what ails me. I think I wrote a post this week on the alignments that I'm seeking is always within me, because the medicine to my suffering was always within me. It was never just a physical thing. I mean, look at Miracle J. Miracle J, and I believe a few other guys are the prime example of, so what if bad things happen? So what? It's supposed at this point, it's supposed to happen. I truly believe that.
Mhm.
If an obstacle comes in your way, it becomes the way. It's the same with business. If dumb shit happens in your company, let's figure out how to deal with this and turn this into even more money. Too much, and I'm still to some extent guilty of this. Too much I complain. Too much. I'm trying to reprogram myself to the point where I get excited when there's trouble. I want to get excited when there's a challenge. And it's hard to do that, man. It's
Oh yeah.
hard.
Oh yeah.
It's hard. I mean, some challenges suck. By the way, I hate writing things. I like having a simple structure, like an Excel with a framework and typing in codes and just letting the shit do whatever it needs to do and never think about it again until it becomes a problem. But actually to write daily, journaling daily, I know it's effective, but who among us does it every day consistently? It takes character to do that. And that's what I'm seeking. And because the so what question is being answered, meaning I'm doing this so that I become more of a man of quality. I wrote a post today on it was never just about the money. In order to get the lifestyle that I want, I need to have a system in place that handles the things that I want, being it the money through the business and investments, being my physical prowess as a man, being strong, knowing how to fight, and also how to dance and have proper sex and whatever. There's That's the kind of system I'm looking for. And what I've noticed through the IMC process is the process is but a tool. It's a knife. You can cut with it. You can cut whatever with it. You can use the blunt end to blunt somebody. It's in the way that I express myself, is in that way that I color my life. It brings in flavor, the flavor that every one of us is seeking. I mean, you like good food, don't you?
Of course. I like variety.
Well, that's why I don't have a single relationship.
Exactly.
And and in that, in the pain, we find the humor of it. Because in order to have that variety, we need to go through pain. If what we want is worth it, we need to be prepared to pay that price. And often it's not just money, it's the suffering through the process. And Pete Kirkwood made this quote. I'm paraphrasing, but he who suffers the best will suffer the best. He will get the best life. He will get more out of it. It's like, if I am to prepare for competition, let's say BJJ or whatever, I need to be put in bad situations in order to learn and strengthen my weaknesses so that I know how to set these things up more. Usually it's those fighters that do very well defensively in almost every game.
And for the audience that'll be watching this, that's something that society will tell you you don't need to go through. You know, they all want to live in comfort. They want to buy luxurious things, couches, sofas, whatnot. But see, you're right when you say all that because that's where the power lies. The power to be able to not only be in comfortable situations, but to actually go through it. because you mentioned that whatever obstacle is in the way, that is the way. If there's an obstacle in business, if there's an obstacle in your life, well, then, my friend, that's what you have to go ahead and force yourself to and break through just to get past it.
Exactly,
I
exactly.
just I
But
just started.
can we help the people that want to work hard but aren't seeing the results? And that's where my business comes into play.
Mhm.
Because yes, working smarter is better. Don't get me wrong. Don't do dumb shit because it won't work. It's like the rule of insanity. Doing the same bullshit over and over again, expecting a different result,
That's
won't work.
insanity.
That is insanity. But what if we could take a few steps back and ask ourselves, it's like washing dishes at night when you're tired. Nobody wants to do it. But what if we start to simplify the chaos by sorting it, dishes with dishes, glasses with glasses, utensils with utensils, and then in a very instance, we have created a small spark. That small spark, if cultivated, becomes a flame, a blaze, a volcano. And
Mhm.
it's you start to realize washing dishes ain't shit. You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
still don't like
some
doing it,
people
don't get me
treat it like a
wrong.
big thing.
We treat it like a big thing, exactly. Because the obstacle doesn't have to be a big thing. It can actually heal you. It can actually make the company better. But of course, through politics, even internal dialogues and whatever, it gets in the way. And if it gets in the way anyway, might as well work through it. But can we work through it smarter? Because smart work in combination with hard work gets the job done faster, more efficient. It's like relearning game through ACD. I always thought, I needed to just be tough and, play the game right in my mind and just run scripts. I just thought it was that. Now we're learning, oh no, that's just a very small percentage. And
Mhm.
then we start to learn, wait a minute, there's a quote from Joe Nicasio, my business coach. Major in major things, meaning do what matters, specialize in what matters. Because that's where the money's at, that's where the lifestyle is at that you want. Because nobody cares about minor bullshit. Nobody really cares that much about spiritualism if money is the issue. You see what I mean?
Yep.
And in that, we start to figure out, oh shit, why am I doing this IMC process? Because I want to love myself more, because I want to admire myself more, because I want to respect myself more, because I want to rely on myself more, be even to the point where I can change so much from within that the outside will have no other choice but to follow, which follows the principle of vision. This comes from Frank White. He who knows where he's going, the universe will make way and, of course, give you the gifts of challenge so that you are ready for the lifestyle that you want. And isn't that what we have been doing, Joe?
That is what we've
Yeah.
been doing up until this point. So I felt up until this point, I fell inside that same trap of I didn't have enough money to buy stuff to live however I wanted.
Yeah.
So that was my mentality back then. I want to start a business because I want to make more money. I want to do this because why? Because I want to make more money. But then taking on this process, this new process, you start to realize that it wasn't even about the external this whole time. It's like you said earlier, the more that we study and the more that we go through this process, you realize that it's all internal. You start
Yeah.
building, what is it? That character. What
The
character?
character.
The character that can take over the world. The character that can get through any obstacle compared to the person who will complain, let's say.
Yeah.
And just that alone, just that little difference or that big difference, depending how far you are, is what matters.
Very true. Very true. Now, on the topic of character, it took me a while to figure out who I wanted to be.
Mhm.
But it's such a vague term, so I had to split it up into my own technology. Now, I'm very good at understanding things and combining it into my own system. So I assume you're very familiar with Stoicism, yeah?
Yes.
All right. Now that we know that, how I picture Stoicism is a lion, an animal, a beast of virtue facing any obstacle, meaning there's a mountain in the beginning, meaning I am ready to face and I will face you with my face. So as I bite into the obstacle, the body still has to process it. Just to swallow isn't enough. And that's why I started to wonder, wait a minute, if something needs to be processed, it's an internal process usually because it's the obstacle becomes part of me now. Because I changed through the obstacle. Get it? But
Mhm.
if I am to change to the outside, becoming tougher and more stoic, that means on the inside, I need a system to catch that. Because where stoicism is hard, Zen Buddhism becomes the next element. And we learn that through the surrender experiment.
Mhm.
Because the whole idea is not only am I going to devour it and overcome it, I'm supposed to be challenged. And through that challenge, I will be healed because now the obstacle becomes nutrients for the character.
Yeah.
But I'm not done because now we have the yin and yang elements. But what about the frame? Who does that frame become towards me, Ryan, observing it? ACD once asked the question of, if you had a father, who would that be? Who would you want it to be? And that's the answer. That's the one who answers. It is the just and kind king that looks upon his son in times of need, where he's very kind, very warm, the surrender experiment, very understanding, but very just in the sense of factually, this is what happened. Here's where you fucked up. Regardless of whether it's your fault or not, here's where you demonstrated incompetency. Now it's time to learn until you're competent. Because once you're competent, you start winning.
Mhm.
And it's in that I see characters that inspire such fatherhood, be it in business, be it in martial arts. I literally, and it's to some guys, it might be goofy, but it's literally what inspires me, brings me in spirit of the character. And in that, I mean, the Shere Khan wears his suit. Now, this specific Funko Pop, this one is my very first Funko Pop that I bought. It's primarily inspired by what ACD does and a lot of other IMC leaders. And I always place it in front of me to remind myself this character is meant to make decisions. Because this is another philosophy. The universe will reward decisiveness because decisiveness is connected to your vision. If you know what you want, if you know what you really, really want, then you should not hesitate when it comes to making a choice. It's one thing if you don't know anything about the situation and you need to take a few steps back to look at, okay, what is really going on? But if you know what's going on and you need to make a choice between either A or B, you need to make that choice decisively and commit.
Mhm.
And that's the character that I'm going for. You cannot have as the INC process. You'll get sick, you'll get tired, you'll leave it, you'll feel bad about it. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
Oh no no.
Uh, uh, and that's how character is applied, in my opinion. As we grow, we attract. We need to raise ourselves as our own child, as our own children, through whatever expression of life. Because where there is life, we expect suffering. And if I love life, I have to, love the suffering. It's like, I don't know if you ever been placed in side control by, the biggest guy in the JoJo. weighing 1,000 pounds and shit. You feel your ribs crushing.
I
Ever
feel
been?
like anyone who's done martial arts has definitely been through that. And if they haven't, well, then you haven't done martial arts yet.
Yeah. I mean that sucks. But if it is endurable, endure it because he will tire, and there will come a chance. And even if you have to, that it doesn't matter. If you could endure it, man. I mean, I have quit a lot of things and I've read it, and some things I've endured and gotten a lot of out of it. And every time I try to, you know, find a reason to stop, there's another reason to continue. And would I rather have a story of perseverance or a story of victimhood? And that's where the characters plays in a lot. What story do you want to tell your kids? What story do you want to tell your grandkids? That's that's a rough one for a lot of guys, man. That's what story. I mean, one of the greatest stories that I know of my family is my direct grandfather. Rags to riches, an orphan, and to one of the richest men of the old country of Suriname, a country just above Brazil, and he literally uh, had to leave his house, and work in deep into the jungles of Amazon and bring the logs to the inner city to be sawn. And at some point, he made so much money that he invested it into building his own company and to exporting it into to Europe and America and whatever, and then building. Basically, this guy doesn't even have an education, and basically building a multi-million-dollar business to the little knowledge that he has. And the only thing he knew how to do was work hard and talk good. And you're telling me a guy from a university is less successful than him? Then it's not a question of my education, and it's a question of my character.
Yes.
And that's why this process is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
as in essence, what I'll be talking about in my event,
before you go
paints
on,
into profit. Yeah,
what is your event called?
paints into profit.
There it is. Pains
There it is.
into profits.
Exactly. And that's what it's all about. I mean, literally just what I explained is the core elements of the event. It's talking about my discovery of, wait a minute, using the book Kybalion, we start to realize if if one thing is true for one domain, be it business, it should be true for life as well. Because he who knows how to market himself will evidently be very well connected. It's the same thing with getting in contact with women. If you're so well known in certain circles, of course people will give you their business cards, do business with you. You'll have women, um business opportunities, etc. And that's why this whole process is so important. Now
Mm-hmm.
I'm just discussing my ideas about how to combine this, and it has worked. I have proven this outside of the IMC nation. And how cool would it be to bring value from my expertise to the tribe? Because the next step is something I'm trying to do with Arian, which is an expert in building events. What if I can not only write a book, which is going to be bitch and a half to do, but actually create a movement around this by applying the natural laws, you know, because what Kybalion says is the higher rule will always win. And the whole IMC process is filled with higher rules. As we learn, it's like going into a temple, a Shaolin temple. And yes, It's a lot of physicality, a lot of social dynamics and stuff. But the deeper you delve into it, the more the puzzle pieces start to connect on a final level. And you just become this mad scientist almost, where only you and like-minded people can actually talk about this, which makes it a bitch and a half to market towards, the normal crowd, but that's part of the fun. And that's why it's called pain student prop, because whatever ills you can become medicine. And if we know anything about, you know, the pharmaceutical companies, medicine is profit.
Yep.
That's the way it is, man. That's the way it is. But other than that, yeah, man. Looking forward, I still don't know what time I'm going to give it. I still need to discuss things with Chris, but really looking forward to it. It's my first solo event ever, so that's interesting, man. And do you have any other questions for me? Because I can just keep talking.
I do. So we're approaching the 40-minute mark,
Of
but
course,
one last question.
do
So
tell.
when it comes to these people who are trying to learn this, for example, one of their biggest challenges is basically getting through any obstacle.
Right.
So how does one take the time to first of all stop and recognize what's going on, and here's where they have trouble, because I've talked to a few people about this, taking a
Mm.
step back and just kind of analyzing what's going on, because some people find that hard to do. Like
Right.
they're all like their mind is in the problem, it's in a situation, they want to do this. So I'm like, no, you should take a step back first, take 3 steps back behind your mind, and analyze first what's going on, and then
So,
make a
uh-huh.
decision.
So what I do, this is my own process, is literally step away from the situation. Often tunnel vision is caused by being very stressed. So why not? You cannot analyze in a stressed situation. You need to come from a place that's at least neutral, so that we can be, to a certain degree, unbiased and look at facts. And same way exercise could be, write down in bullet points what happened and even how you're feeling. Fuck it, just write it down. Go to sleep, put it on paper, because if we're going to fix it, we don't need your frustration. We need your focus. That's the first step. Put it on paper what frustrates you and why. It doesn't have to be complex. Let's clean up the mess. Let's organize the chaos. Once you've written it down and you've woken up, look at the situation again. If my friend came with this exact situation, what is the simplest solution and why? Because often what is simple is godly. And I'll tell you why. If you ever do an IT solution that is a complex thing, if even one thing breaks, there's a lot of managing and communicating, and just it's even more headache than the actual problem.
Mhm.
So that's why I say the simplest solution is often the answer. It's the same thing with martial arts. If you have a puzzle piece that is your opponent, that's so good that you just don't know what to do, it's time to endure and learn from him. See why he does the things that he does, and you'll learn a lot. And leave your ego at the door. That's one of the things as well. And by applying these small steps, removing every constraint, the strength of emotion, your frustration, your shame, fuck it, put it on paper, put it down, forget about it. It's on paper. Now, what's put on paper can be handled, because now we're all on one page. That's how I do my business. Let's put it on paper, let's get to work. And as we slowly dissect what is really going on, like that famous scene of Julian Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street,
Yeah.
where they have an issue. They're trying to sell penny stocks to rich clients, and they're all saying different things and blah, blah, blah. And we slowly start to summarize, okay, what's being said? Cool. Now, what looks similar? Okay, so in essence, they're saying this. Now, what is really being said? And then basically, they went to three things that ultimately became one or two things. And by going to the root cause of your problem, you now have the opportunity to fix it. And why I say opportunity is might not necessarily be able to fix it. And that's why you need a coach like Doshaya, a coach like me, a coach with coaches with an IMC. Because not only are we life coaches, we have specialties and we have a network. And the network becomes the network worth because the tribe is valuable in and of itself. We are specialists to a high degree. There's a reason I'm called an expert data analyst because the data is one thing, but to analyze, to hear what the problem is, and to delve deeper into what the core problem is saves me a lot of time, and it gives me the possibility to hit the bullseye in the purest way possible. And that's what it's about. If you can do that by yourself, man, you already have a system to help people. Man, if anybody watches this and you actually did what I just said and you wrote this down, you can help your family get out of the family trauma they're in. You can help your girlfriend get over whatever mental bullshit is going on. Because once we cleaned up, we can get up.
Yep.
It's the same thing with the washing of dishes. You organize the chaos, meaning I'm actually starting to enjoy this. There's no longer negative emotions. Now that I've washed it, fried it, put the dishes away, I now feel good about myself. And thus we have the final piece of the puzzle. Do this not only to solve the problem, but to feel so good about yourself that you think you're the baddest motherfucker in history. And that is what builds character.
Very powerful stuff, man. Very valuable stuff. Is there any last words you have for the audience or for whoever's going to be
Last
watching this?
words would be life is nothing but a peanut. You need the dirt to grow. That would be all.
Perfect. Again, this is the Flow of Discourses, and we're about to end this because we have to jump on to Brotherhood of the Wolf. Again, Ryan G, it's an honor to have you on my podcast, and
Likewise.
this definitely ain't gonna be the last time. I feel like you have
Bet.
so much more to say.
You should see
Very,
my bookcase. It's like I know there's like a let's turn off the camera behind me because I have like so many fucking books. It's just ridiculous, and I mean it's a mess. That's how many books I have. It's like I'm so full of knowledge that I wish people would, you know, take up contact and learn from me.
yeah.
And I can only do so much in an hour. So be decisive and get on the podcast with Josiah. And if you're even more decisive and want to pay coaches, you know, you have Josiah, you have me, and I have a defend, painting the profit. Let's get it.
Let's do it. All right, brother.
See you
Os.
soon. Let's